Good evening. Welcome to the big story. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Flavie Rosa. And I'm Sean Yao.
Tonight's big stories. The Supreme Court blocks the further transfer of PhilHealth's excess funds back to the National Treasury, although 60 billion of almost 90 billion pesos have been returned.
Senate leaders say former President Rodrigo Duterte's testimony at the hearing yesterday can be used to file cases against him, given that he was speaking under oath. Senator Risa Ontiveros urges the DOJ and the ICC to look into them.
And Typhoon Leon is steadily and rapidly gaining strength as it makes its way up to northern Luzon. According to Pag-asa, this one is shaping up to be a super typhoon.
The Supreme Court has issued a temporary restraining order on the further transfer of PhilHealth's excess funds back to the National Treasury. This TRO is effective immediately, which means they can't remit any more money.
The TRO is effective immediately. So this means kasi over the past few months, meron na pong transfer ng funds from PhilHealth to the National Treasury.
No less than 3 petitions were filed by different groups over it. First was the group led by Senate Minority Leader Coco Pimentel on August 2. Then on October 16, both Bayan Muna and Isang Bayan Coalition filed separate petitions. The High Court consolidated all the petitions in deciding on the case, although it's requiring Isang Bayan to file further comments.
But essentially, all of these petitions question the legality of that fund transfer. Under the UHC, or the Universal Healthcare Act, PhilHealth funds can only be used for 2 purposes: to expand the health coverage or to cut the premiums of contributing members. Now, since May, PhilHealth has returned funds totaling 60 billion pesos in 2 tranches. The last tranche was 29.9 billion pesos and was set to be transferred next month. This is what the TRO has stopped. The total amount of the DOF ordered returned is 89.9 billion pesos. It is not clear at this point what will happen to the previously transferred PhilHealth funds, now back in the National Treasury. But it is expected to be brought up during the oral argument scheduled for January 14, 2025.
In a statement, PhilHealth said it fully respects and will abide by the decision of the Supreme Court on the issue. The agency said it remains focused on its mission to provide all Filipinos with adequate financial protection against health risks. Petitioners have since welcomed the High Court decision. Bayan Muna Chair Nery Colmenares said the TRO is a significant victory for the Filipino people, especially for PhilHealth beneficiaries who rely on these funds for their healthcare needs. He went on to say, "We must safeguard these funds from being diverted to unprogrammed appropriations filled with pork barrel projects, which threaten job security and employee benefits." Meanwhile, former Supreme Court Associate Justice Antonio Carpio, who leads Isang Bayan, said he's hoping that the executive branch will return all the transferred funds back to PhilHealth pending the final decision of the Supreme Court.
For its part, the Finance Department said it likewise respects the Supreme Court's decision. DOF Secretary Ralph Recto assured the public that the agency will fully comply with the order. Recto also reiterated, though, that the move to sweep the idle, unused, and excess funds of government-owned and controlled corporations, or GOCCs, is a mandate under Republic Act 11975, which was approved by Congress. Before proceeding, he says the DOF exercised due diligence and consulted extensively with the government's legal experts to ensure they were in full compliance with the country's laws.
And after yesterday's blockbuster Senate hearing, former President Rodrigo Duterte gave a press conference wherein he clarified that President Bongbong Marcos was never in his narco list. Still, Senate leaders say that Duterte can be held liable for everything else that he said at that hearing, given that he was speaking under oath. Julie Baiza reports.
Wala actually. Ito prangka-prangkan. Hindi naman naulan noon ako. Hindi man masyado kami kilala niya. Kung nandyan yung pangalan niya, I would have voiced a lie in public. At saka kung nandoon yung pangalan niya, isasabi ko talaga, yung pangalan mo nandyan. If I name one, I name all. Binasa ko eh. So wala naka-eskapo doon. Bakit ako Wala. In fairness to the President.
This was how former President Rodrigo Duterte reacted yesterday to questions as to whether or not President Bongbong Marcos was in the narco list concocted during his administration's war on drugs. Recall that in January, during his May Sug prayer rally in Davao, Duterte claimed that Marcos was in his narco list.
Pinakitaan ako ng evidence ng PDEA. Doon sa listahan, nandoon yung pangalan mo. Si Bongbong Marcos bangag noon. Ngayong presidente na, bangag natin ang presidente.
In response, Marcos had said Duterte must have been under the effect of fentanyl. Fentanyl is a powerful opioid, which the former president had admitted to using for pain relief. In the face of thousands who have died, Duterte maintains that he will continue his relentless war on drugs in Davao City if he wins the mayoral seat next year.
Pang-president, bababa ako ng mayor. Day one na. Either you swim or you run. I do not give a shit. Get out of Davao or you die.
At yesterday's Senate hearing, Duterte was his usual brash self, at one point outright mocking authorities. Of the presiding senators, it was only Senator Rosa who challenged Duterte head-on.
Matagal ako pumapatay ng tao hanggang ngayon, hindi pa sila nakapile ng kaso.
So mas okay
Walang
pong
trabaho.
patayin sila kesa ipreso
Wala akong
sila.
pakialam dyan sa kriminal, ma'am.
So thank you for
Akong
making that of record.
pakialam sa kriminal kung saan silang impernong gusto nilang pumunta.
Well, Mr. Chair, wala namang jurisdiction ng Senado sa impyerno. Dito lang sa bansa natin pwede tayong mag-investigate.
Ba't doon tayo pupunta?
Well, wala po akong ambisyon pumuntang impyerno pa. Pero Mr.
Ontiveros
Chair,
also called Duterte out for spewing profanities and cursing all throughout the hearing.
Hindi ako sensitive. Ayaw ko lang talaga ng bastos. Ayaw ko ng walang hiya. Lalo na pag pinag-uusapan natin ng seryosong bagay ng war on drugs saka
Kaya
extrajudicial killings.
ako bastos, ma'am.
Salamat kayo,
Wala ang
Mr.
hiya
Chair.
talaga ako. Yan ang totoo. Siguro, hindi ako dadating itong pagka-presidente kung hindi ako bastos at hindi ako walang iya.
Later on, she called on the Department of Justice and the International Criminal Court to look into what she calls Duterte's admission under oath. Senate President Cheese Escudero also believes Duterte can be held accountable for all he had said at the hearing.
Ang pagkakaiba lang, nung sinasabi niya nung presidente man siya o pagkatapos siya maging presidente o bago siya naging presidente nung siya ay mayor, ito'y sinabi sa isang talumpati, sa isang interview. Ang pinakaiba kahapon, lahat ng binitiwan niyang salita kahapon ay under oath, pinanumpaan. At sinabi niyang yan ay totoo sa abot ng kanyang nalalaman na pwedeng magamit kung sakasakali pabor o laban sa kanya. Madalas sinasabi ng ilang mga nakapalibot kay Pangulong Duterte, dating Pangulong Duterte, na biro lang yon, nag-joke lang yon. Hindi marahil pwedeng sabihin biro pa kung ano man ang pinanumpaang sinabi niya.
Senate Blue Ribbon Committee Chairman Coco Pimentel has also recommended that lawyers study all the statements brought up by the former president during the hearing. But one Duterte ally who's spoken up for him is former spokesman, Attorney Harry Roque, who's in hiding from an arrest order by the House of Representatives.
Iba ang pulisya doon sa pag-amin dahil ang pag-amin, ang confession ay personal, no? At iba hiwala yan sa policy. Ang sinasabi lang niya, gawin niyo ang katungkulan ninyo. Kapag kayo gumagawa ng katungkulan ninyo sang-ayon sa batas, suportado kayo.
Well, in the face of criticism that he wasn't able to control the hearing yesterday, Senator Coco Pimentel said he was just being objective and fair. He also says Senate will certify the committee report from the hearing and that it will be open to anyone who wants to use it.
I-announce na lang ng Senate na open yung records namin kung sino ang gustong kumuha ng kopya, isi-certify namin yan, and then kung ano man yung for whatever legal purposes that you have in mind, di gamitin ninyo. Masyadong matagal kung hihintayin nyo pa na formal action from the committee or from the plenary. Masyadong matagal. Kaya nga, sino man interesado sa records na ito, kunin ninyo. I will be greatly disappointed kung mas mauna pang humingi sa akin ng isang international body rather than a Philippine group, group of Filipinos, di ba? Dapat Filipinos muna kumikilos dyan. Maybe an NGO, an organized group, or an individual, or a group of lawyers, of course, oriented people. Huwag naman, ako madi-disappoint talaga ako kung walang huminging Pilipino, ang humingi pa is an international body.
On the other hand, Senate President Cheese Escudero, though he did not directly criticize Pimentel's handling of the hearing, he did say he was glad Senator Risa Ontiveros spoke up when Duterte kept spewing profanities and cursing throughout the session.
Pinoint out ni Senator Risa na OA yung pagmumura at walang lugar yan dito sa Senado. Sang-ayon ako doon. Ang sagot ng dating Pangulo ay nagkukwento lamang siya at ang kinukwento niya ay nagmumura siya noon. Hindi yata totoo yon sa lahat ng mga pagmumurang ginawa niya. At magandang na-point out yon ni Senator Risa dahil ayaw kong mamanhid ang Senado o ang lipunan o tayong lahat. Naisipin nating okay lang yon. Hindi okay yon, ha? At tama nga, gaya nung nasabi ko, na pinoint out yon ni Senator Risa.
Meanwhile, over in the lower house, Quad Committee Chairman Congressman Ace Barbers said Duterte's pronouncements, for instance, on the existence of the death squad, should be taken into consideration in any case buildup. He also told our sister program he did not want to criticize his Senate colleagues, but stressed once more that they should just do a joint investigation to make it faster and more comprehensive.
I don't want to criticize them much as we don't want them to criticize us. No? Let the people judge it na lang. Ang amin lang doon is that if you recall, prior to the setting of this Senate inquiry, I was already proposing na sana mag-isa na lang. Magkaroon ng isang parang ICAM, no? Magkaroon tayo ng isang investigation na parallel, sabay kami, no? Habang nandiyan dyan sa harap namin yung mga iniimbestigahan natin. I think most of my colleagues in the lower house will have are preparing educated and intelligent questions, so to speak.
One of the more poignant moments of the Senate hearing came when Father Flavie Villanueva, a priest of the Society of the Divine Word, unfurled a long scroll with the names of some 312 alleged EJK victims. Father Villanueva helped found an organization called Project Paghilom that counsels victims, and he joins us now tonight via Zoom. Good evening, Father Villanueva.
Good evening, ladies. Good evening to our viewers. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. Before we get to the hearing proper, first things first, for the benefit of our viewers who don't know you, could you talk briefly about what your role is as far as this investigation over the alleged extrajudicial killings is concerned and what Project Paghilom is all about?
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And very briefly, as a priest, I was given a office called Justice, Peace, Integrity of Creation in 2014. The following year, I initiated a program for the homeless people in Metro Manila, calling it Arnold Janssen Kalinga Center, that provides dignified, systematic, and holistic care for the homeless. Showers, buffet meals, psycho-spiritual processing for their traumas, and that leads to employment. Now, when the killings of Mr. Duterte started on his first day of office, I was already alarmed by the death toll that was rising. And having looked at the profile of those who were killed, we realized that they were breadwinners. So they live in the margins, they lost their breadwinners, they have orphans who need food and education. And I realized that if no one would reach out and help these widows, they eventually will be ending up in the streets. So given that, and more importantly, the role of the church to be beside widows and orphans, I started a program called Paghilom, following the same principles of providing dignified, systematic, and holistic care.
So specifically, you counsel and assist the widows and orphans of the alleged EJK victims. Specific to that hearing yesterday, how many were you representing? How many families?
Since 2016 and to date, we have at least 312 and counting. We gather widows by batches. Whenever we have around 15, at least 15, then we could start the processing of the 7 Saturday processing of the widows, beginning with the widows.
So yun na nga, that was the scroll that you unfurled yesterday in Senate. I think we have that video. We could roll that.
The scroll, ladies, would pertain to the debts, to the victims themselves. The families would be 312. The scroll that I enrolled has, if I'm not mistaken, 329 names on it.
What's with the difference, Father, from 312 and 329? Who are the others, and what are the differences between, the more than 10 people?
Yeah, 312 would be the number of families. 329 would be the number of deaths in the family. Let us take note that in some families, there were 2 or even 3 who were killed. That's why there's an additional number of 10 or so in the list.
Okay, I'm curious, Father, how these people found you, the survivors, basically, of those allegedly killed in EJKs during the drug war. Do they have a support group? How did that work? Or was it spread by word of mouth, recommendations?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, which I'd rather say we found one another. The beginning, I didn't really know anyone. So I started going out again in the streets and asking around, joining conferences. And in one conference, I heard, listened, and introduced myself to the first 2 or the first 3 victims who came out as early as 2016. And from then, I offered my handkerchief, I offered my number, and they came to me. And then that's when I started listening to them, formalizing a concept note on the guide of the program. And the only condition I asked from these first 3 widows was to bring more widows to me. So that started in 2016 with batch 1, and then batch 2 with 7. Batch 3, we had around 15 already. And as it grew, we now have 19 batches to date.
Okay, but more recently, Father Flavie, I saw, and this was even covered by the BBC and other news outlets, you, along with forensic pathologist Dr. Raquel Fortun, you have been going around and exhuming the bodies of those killed, just in case there is, a case that will be filed. How did you go from, helping the survivors to actually getting on the investigative part of things?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Honestly, that was not part of the original 5-phase stages of program Paghilom. I just had to respond to that when I learned that there's such a thing as rent, or what you call grave for rent. Graves for rent in public cemeteries. And one of our mothers did lose the grave of her husband. And when that was brought to my attention and meeting the widow, I even asked, how could you let that happen? How could you let that happen? And then she looked at me sheepishly with the response of saying, Father, ano uunahin ko? Bread o yung buhay? I was very much disturbed with that response, so that prompted me to organize a list of all the graves that will be expiring after 5 years. So since the pandemic, we have been exhuming every month of bodies that are threatened to expire in their graves, and instead of simply cremating them, I phoned in our good friend Raquel Fortun if she's interested to probe into it, which she readily accepted. So we have what we call, I bring to her the bones, kalansay, and in 2 occasions, I think we brought out our findings, declaring it as kalansay ng katotohanan. Then from there, we built a resting place in Caloocan, which is a memorial site right now. It's the first EGK columbarium.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, Father, yesterday during the hearing, Senator Bato de la Rosa challenged you to file cases. He did say, he even alleged na propaganda purpose daw. Yung hindi nyo daw pag-file, so parang propaganda lang daw. But Father, how many cases are you looking to file? Have some already been filed? And what is the role of the ICC in this?
Okay, thank you. The senators seem to be quite at a loss with the role of Program Paghilom. As mentioned, we gather families to help address the trauma. Second, the role of filing cases should be done by the state themselves. Thirdly, in our desire to file, which we have done in some cases, the families end up being threatened by state agents themselves. So, given these elements, we have been very careful in filing cases because it boomerangs back. I don't mind if it's on me or against me, but it boomerangs back to the most vulnerable people themselves, who are the families. They're most ready to file, but they would always tell me, Father, do we need to enter a sanctuary program? Do we need to hide and fear for our lives? So these questions lead me to respond to them. Let's wait for a better political landscape, a more favorable, just, and a system that would truly provide the justice that you deserve.
And would you say that's now? This favorable...
It's happening now, ladies. I think this is better than before compared to the Duterte years, wherein anyone who speaks out was either gunned down or threatened or put to jail, like Laila. And I also had my own sedition case back then, and death threats every breakfast. But I could say that the time is better now. The ICC is advancing progressing in their case built up. So I would like to believe it's just a matter of time.
But specifically when Senator De La Rosa said you were in it to push propaganda, what did you think? What was going through your mind? And how did the families feel about that?
The families they were throwing supports left and right through text messages. And when a clown opens his mouth, you just simply laugh at it because it's a joke.
Father, I was Googling you earlier today, and I found you mentioned the ICC already. It just made me remember that on the show we were talking to ICC Assistant to Counsel Cristina Conti, and she did mention that the ICC looks for patterns. And I found an article that says you also found 4 elements that seem to repeat themselves on some of these corpses. What can you tell us? They are, of course, 1 to 3 sachets of shabu worth 200 pesos, 3 signs of torture, a 38 caliber with the serial number scratched out, and dirty feet.
Yes.
Can you put that into context for us?
Well, the context is simple. These are elements that, in my experience and those who have seen it firsthand in the sites, have identified these elements present in each cadaver, in each body that's been gunned down. And this pattern is also similar to the narratives of Edgar Bato and Arthur Las Cañas, if you would read their affidavits. So it was simply another thing that I could highlight is that this pattern has been there from the very beginning of Davao. Now in a state sanctioned killing. So it points out to one thing, that there's a system of killings that's taking place. Raquel Fortun in her autopsy also was able to establish a system of pattern. So easily conclude that this is an organized group of people who are out there for one objective, that is to kill.
Circling back to what you said earlier, you said the ICC is advancing, is progressing. How would you know this? Have they been speaking to some of the families that you represent?
No, I don't recall any communication with the ICC and our families. Though back then, uh, some time ago, we did have some dialogues, and the thing that they have been updating us and listening to people who are directly in contact with them. These are the things that spars us hope that there is great progress that's taking place.
Father, if you could just share with us some of the numbers. Right now, like you mentioned, the environment's a little bit more conducive to filing cases. And although I know that it is not your job to file cases, are you helping or assisting any of these survivor families in filing cases? Have some of them changed their minds? And if so, do you mind telling us just a vague number or a general number?
There are families who come to me, dear ladies, with cases already. And given that, we don't turn anyone. We don't choose whoever comes to us. So if a widow comes to us with a case filed either by the PAO or by other law groups and seeking our trauma assistance, we do that. We provide for that. And if you would look at the exact number, I think we would have at least 10 to 12 cases on hand, excluding those cases that Dr. Raquel Fortun discovered with false death certificates.
The false death certificates, oh my, that issue has not been sorted out yet.
Not yet.
How many are you aware of?
I think according to the doctor, we have exhumed. I personally have exhumed around 100, and there would be at least 9 to 11 from our last count.
At least, ano yung 100? Sorry?
100
We have exhumed at least
Exhumed
100.
at least 100 bodies and at least 9 to 11 false death certificates
Yes.
that you've confirmed. Okay. We're going to have to leave that there for tonight, unfortunately, because we've run out of time. But thank you so much for talking to us, Father Flavie Villanueva of Project Paghilom.
We're going to be taking a quick break, but after that, we also hear from former Duterte top cop, now Senator Bato de la Rosa, also present in yesterday's Senate hearing. Don't miss that conversation. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News.
More reactions to Senator Coco Pimentel's job as the presiding officer of the Senate hearing on the war on drugs yesterday. Former Senator Ping Lacson, for one, was not impressed. In a tweet, he said, yesterday, the upper chamber was invaded by the former president of the Republic. Only one consistently and steadfastly stood up to preserve the dignity of the Philippine Senate. She happens to be a woman who answers present during a roll call. Her name, Risa Ontiveros. Kabataan Party list Representative Congressman Raul Manuel, for his part, also slammed the hearing, saying in a tweet, the Senate shouldn't allow Rodrigo Duterte, leader of state-sanctioned killings in the Philippines from 2016 to 2022, to talk nonsense and off-topic during hearings. Being a former president is not a license to waste the time of the Filipino people, and again, Bato should not be allowed to interpolate.
Now, speaking of Senator Bato, we have him with us again tonight. Senator Bato de la Rosa, who was there yesterday, of course, both as a lawmaker and also a resource person. He joins us now over the phone. Good evening, Senator Bato. Thank you for joining us. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, good evening sa inyo at magandang gabi sa ating lahat.
Okay, Senator, how do you assess anong nangyari kahapon? Of course, nakita na natin yung mga reactions online. Anong masasabi ninyo? Did it go as you thought or as you expected it would?
Well, it went fine, no? At least nakapagsalita yung ating dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte at nakuha natin ang side niya patungkol sa war on drugs.
Okay, yun na po ba yung only appearance ni dating Presidente Rodrigo Duterte, or sa susunod na hearings ay may invitation pa rin ba siya at darating po ba siya? Kung kailan man yun, we understand there's no fixed date as yet.
Most likely, yun na yun. Dahil sabi nga niya kahapon, ayaw nga niyang umuwi, di ba? Sabi niya, tapusin natin ito ngayon. Dahil sayang yung pamasahe ko pauwi ng Davao. Tapusin natin ito. Kaya inabot kami ng gabi kahapon. Talaga niya matapos na.
So ano po yung nasabi niyo para makumbinsi siyang umuwi? Kasi kaming nanunood po, medyo pinos po nung live stream nung Senate. Habang nagyayari po yun, what did you tell him for him to agree to leave?
Sabi ko, tapos na sir, wala nang magtatanong sa'yo. Wala nang mag-interpellate sa'yo. Kaya pwede ka nang umuwi, pahinga ka na. Hindi lang namin hindi ko na take into consideration yung nature niya na kaya pala sa umaga nakalimutan ko na kaya worried ako kung matagal siyang pasalita dahil inaantok ko siya. Nung umaga, pag-start kami 10 o'clock. Pero nung later, nung kinagabihan active na siya. Ayaw na niyang huminto. Yun pala, yun nga, basically, he is a night person. Tulog siya sa umaga, paggabi, gising yan. Kaya nung towards mga 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock nga, wala na buhay na siya. Ayaw na niyang huminto. Ayaw niyang umalis.
Okay.
Senator, one of the questions that was being raised is why did you not inhibit from the hearing? Obviously, you are a loyal ally of former President Duterte. In your own words, sinabi niyo po sa sister program namin that you will be loyal to Duterte forever and ever. But you are also now a senator, which means you're not a cabinet member, you are accountable to the people. So there is a question there of why did you not inhibit so that they could have a hearing free of politics?
Alam nyo, the people that are calling for me to inhibit from that investigation are the people who doesn't want to get the truth. Gusto nila na mananatili yung mga kasinungalingan na sinabi ng mga resource persons doon sa Quadcom ay mananatili. Hook, line, and sinker, yun na ang ating gospel truth. Whereas kung nandyan ako, maka-counter natin yung kanilang pagsisinungaling. So, yung mga tao na nanawagan na hindi ako mag-attend, ay yung mga tao na interesado na hindi natin makuha yung katotohanan.
Pero wala naman, the witnesses, the resource person from the Quadcom, wala naman po sa Senate hearing. Wala naman si Roina Garma, wala naman si Edilberto Leonardo. Who did you want to counter?
They were all invited. Lahat sila inibitahan natin. So, what's the problem?
Yes, but
the problem kung nandoon ako.
Yes, but they did not turn up. So,
Kaya nga, inibitahan natin sila, hindi sila nag-shoot up. Ibig sabihin, somebody is holding them up na huwag pumunta kasi para hindi mabulabog yung kanilang ginawang sinungaling.
Okay, pero nakuha niyo po si Colonel Grijaldo, yung dating Chief of Police dito ng Mandaluyong City nung pinatay si dating PCSO board member Wesley Barayuga. Doon po nagkakaroon ng talo, and I believe si Congressman Abante nag-message pa kay Senator Pimentel sa kalagitnaan ng hearing na nagsasabi, vehemently denying everything that Colonel Grijaldo said on the stand and under oath. Ano pong masasabi niyo doon? Scripted daw, sabi ni Congressman Dan Fernandez, yung sinabi ni Colonel Grijaldo.
Ngayon, nabubulabog yung ginagawa nilang hindi maganda sa mga resource persons nila sa Quadcom ay scripted na. Ngayon na may pulis na hindi na nasisikmura yung pangwawalang hiya nila doon sa mga pulis na kanilang ginagawang resource person ay scripted na. In fact, we have to appreciate the acts of Grijaldo for standing up for the PNP. Dahil hindi maganda talaga yung ginagawa pag ganun, na ina-influence mo yung tao na magsinungaling. So, anong kaso yan, di ba? May kaso yan. Subornation of, kalimutan ko na yung
Subordination of perjury daw.
Perjury. Subordination of perjury. Very clear yun na kaso. Hayaan na lang natin na ganyan ang gagawin nila sa ating kapulisan.
May plano ba kayo mag-file nung kasong yun? Senator, may plan kayo na ituloy na mag-file ng kaso on subordination of perjury?
Hindi ako magpa-file dahil hindi pa akong complainant. Si Colonel Grijaldo, kung siya ang complainant, siya mag-file.
So, are you saying that all of the resource persons yesterday were lying, including Father Flavie Villanueva, including Attorney Chel Diokno, former Senator Laila de Lima? You're saying that lahat sila were lying?
Huwag naman ganun. Hindi ko masinabi yun na lahat sila naglalay.
No, Sen, I'm trying to understand.
Kaya natin pinatawag para ma-counter natin yung pagsisinungaling. Did I say na lahat sila nagsisinungaling?
So,
meron lang akong gustong makuha doon. Yung gumawa ng istorya laban sa akin, sigurado ako na naglalay yun.
So, sino po yun?
Like Espinedo, yung drug lord na si Kerol Espinosa, yung dating mayor ng Iloilo na drug protector, kaya lumaya sa Japan. Sila yun ang aking kwan. Ang i-debunk ko yung kanilang mga statement dahil alam ko na may kasinungalingan.
But you did.
Hindi pa naman sinabi lahat.
But you did also have an exchange with Father Flavie Villanueva. Sabi mo, he was pushing propaganda.
That's my opinion. Dahil sa tagal na nila nag-imbestiga, dami na nila mga bitis na nakuha. Wala pa ko nakita ang kaso na pinail nila. Dapat i-file nila dahil kawawa yung mga biktima ng AJK, kung totoong AJK yan. Otherwise, that will just lead down to propaganda. Kung balita lang kayo ng balita ng gano'n, tapos wala mo kayong ginagawang legal action, dapat mag-file kayo ng kaso.
We actually just had him before you. We just spoke to him before you, and he said the reason they didn't file was, number one, it's not his job, as Senator Pimentel pointed out, it's not his job to file the case. But also, more importantly, that they were scared because of what happened to Senator de Lima back then.
Hindi job niya, pero advokasya makaya niya yon. What's the use of investigating if you are not going to file legal action? Yun na. Bakit? Pare ba kailangan mag-file ng kaso? Pwede ba siya pumunta ang daming ahinsya dyan na pwede filean? Pwede siya dumiritso sa DOJ. Yun lang sa akin. Yun lang naman sa akin. Dapat gawin niya yun para otherwise magiging propaganda lang yan.
Okay, Senator, yesterday sa hearing, former President Duterte confirmed itong existence of the Davao Death Squad. Although he was flip-flopping about this, kinonfirm niya, tapos sinabi niya It was the police chiefs, it was the gangsters, or the
rich people.
The rich people. But to the best of your knowledge, Senator, ano po ba talaga itong Davao Death Squad? Did you know about this during your time as PNP chief?
As I have said, yung Davao Death Squad creation ng media yan doon sa Davao. May namamatay. Pero yung Death Squad na sabi mo, inorganize talaga yan, organized. I don't think so.
But the former President Duterte also pointed to you during the hearing. Sabi niya at one point, ikaw, death squad ka din.
Joke. Sabi niya, joke.
Senator, he was under oath when he said that. Kasi
What? Bakit? Kung under oath siya, din na i-contempt nila. Kung gusto nila i-contempt, under oath mo kaya?
Yun nga yung sinasabi ng mga tao kasi, Senator, na parang naging masyado daw o over-courteous sa dating presidente ang Senate Subcommittee or Blue Ribbon Subcommittee. Anong masasabi niyo doon? In your opinion, yun ba talaga dahil former president siya? In your opinion, hindi po ba medyo talagang maraming napalagpas? Kumbaga, pati po sa rules, at some point, tinatanong na po niya kayo ng mga question without addressing the chair. Alam po natin nangyayari sa mga ibang resource people na hindi sumusunod sa mga rules na iyon.
Kilala mo si President Duterte kung ano ugali niya. Magsalita talaga yan. Regardless. Sabi nga niya, sige, hindi na ako magmumura. Pero patayin ko na lang yan sila.
So Sen, let's get the record straight on Davao Death Squad once and for all. Sabi ni former President Duterte, there is a death squad. Hindi lang namin sure if it's the former PNP chiefs, which he mentioned, or gangsters, which he also mentioned, a group of 7 gangsters, or mga mayayaman, which he also mentioned. Which one is it? Or are you saying that what he said is not true?
Maganda sana kung siya na tanungin niyo kasi siya nagsabi. Basta kung ako tanungin niyo, alam ko walang death squad. Walang death squad. Creation ng media yung Davao Death Squad.
Okay, so as far as you're concerned, wala pong death squad?
Kung ako tanungin niyo, because ilang bisis na ako naghahamon ng barilan ng mga death squad na yan eh. Nung ako'y chief of police ng Davao City, kung may mamatay, tapos sabi nila, binaril daw ng death squad. Ilang beses na ako naghamon na barilan dyan sa mga death squad yan. Wala mang sumipot. Wala mang nagpakita.
So why do you think he said it during the hearing, that there is a death squad? Bakit kayo?
Sabi nga nila, creation nga ng media, mayroong death squad. Oo. Pero hindi yung sabi mo na inorganize talaga yan, that Davao Death Squad, somebody's controlling. Hindi ko masasabi yan because I have no personal knowledge.
Okay, doon po nagka-konting sagutan din po kayo ni Attorney Chel Diokno, no, about semantics. Ito yung negate or neutralize versus kill. At kayo na po mismo nagsabi na noong 2021, the PNP thought it would be good na i-define na natin ito sa handbook once and for all para hindi na magkalabuan. I was wondering bakit hindi na lang yung ginawa earlier para at least malinaw, di ba? Pag nagsusulat tayo ng term paper, may definition of terms, ganyan. Para po malinaw.
Sa amin kasi, malinaw na malinaw sa amin yan. Na neutralization means rendering the enemy capable of doing further criminal acts. Yun sa amin. So how do you neutralize them? By conducting negation operations against them. Hulihin mo, arestuhin mo, o kasuhan mo, o pasurrenderin mo, or mamatay. Just in case lumaban, mamamatay. So kasama yung mamatay dyan sa neutralization. Pero ang gusto kasing i-emphasize ni Jokno na puro patay-patay lang yung neutralization. So kung patay lang ang meaning ng neutralization, bakit hindi ko nilagay sa memorandum circular na to kill, para klaro. Neutralization na eh. Hulihin mo, arestuhin mo, pailan mo ng kaso, pasurrenderin mo. Kasama yan sa neutralization. Ang mahirap kasi, open to misinterpretation yung term kasi gusto talaga lang gawan ng kasalanan yung PNP na sanction ng higher headquarters yung sinasabi ng AJK. Alam mo naman yung motive ng mga tao na yan. Alam mo naman yan. Kami kung gagawa ba kami ng memorandum na yan kung patayin? Huwag na gawa ng memorandum. Bulungan mo na lang yung mga pulis. Patayin mo yan. Patayin mo. Bulungan na lang. Pero mga ebidensya. Gumawa kami ng formal communication because we know it's legal. We've been using that term ever since. Panahon pa ng PCINP noon, nandiyan na yung term na neutralization.
Okay.
Ginagawa lang talaga na masamang meaning to suit their narrative. Gusto talaga nila na i-drive home yung point na gusto nila palabasin na masama ang polis, mamamatay tao ang polis.
Okay, sorry, we're running out of time, Senator, but just very quickly, yung picture that you posted of former President Duterte at a dinner on Friday, I wonder if you could tell us, what's the story behind that? Ano po yung pinag-usapan natin?
Wala, nagkatao lang, merong gun show dito sa Davao, sa SMX. Nandoon ako, nagtingin ako ng mga display ng baril. Maya-maya, dumating din siya. Nagtingin din ng baril, then nagkayayaan. Sabi niya, available ka, mag-dinner tayo. So sumama na ako, nag-dinner kami.
Spontaneous.
So chance meeting lang, so you didn't discuss yung strategy going into the hearing or anything like that?
Never kami nag-discuss about the hearing because alam namin, we're confident that if you're telling the truth, automatic yan lalabas yung truth. Hindi na kailangan ng script na ginagawa na itong sabihin mo itong paragraph na ikaw assign dyan, ikaw mag-confirm yan, ikaw. Walang ganoon sa amin. Kuhan yan, spontaneous yan. Alam namin ang katotohanan. Hindi kailangan paghahandaan ng katotohanan. Lalabas yan kung gusto mong palabasin. Hindi yan kailangan bibigyan ng script yung katotohanan.
Okay. On that note, maraming salamat ulit sa inyong oras at sa pagsama nyo sa amin, pagpapaunlak nyo ngayong gabi. Thank you so much for your time. Senator Bato de la Rosa over the line.
We're taking another quick break, but up next, the defense chief orders preemptive evacuation in areas now on the path of Typhoon Leon. The details when the big story returns. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. You're still with us here on The Big Story. Let's move on straight to the weather. It is quite a grim scenario for Typhoon Leon as it continues to intensify over the waters east of Cagayan. Right now, signal number 2 is up over Batanes, the Babuyan Islands, mainland Cagayan and Apayao, and in the northern and eastern portions of Isabela and the northern parts of Kalinga and Abra. The rest of Isabela, Kalinga, and Abra are all under signal number 1. Same goes for Quirino, Nueva Vizcaya, Mountain Province, Ifugao, Benguet, Ilocos Sur, La Union, and the eastern portion of Nueva Ecija, the northern and eastern portions of Quezon, and those towns and cities of Sorsogon up north. The forecast track shows Leon to intensify further to a super typhoon and be at its closest to Batanes on Thursday. Pag-asa is also not ruling out the possibility of a landfall. Because of this, the DILG and our Interior Secretary and Defense Secretary Gilbert Teodoro has ordered the immediate mandatory evacuations in areas that are at risk or high risk of adverse weather conditions due to Typhoon Leon. In Batanes, uniformed personnel have started helping Ivatans fortify their homes, offices, and schools in preparation for the super typhoon. Food packs and generators have been pre-positioned, and a liquor ban is already in effect. Officials admit that they are already fearful of what might happen if Leon actually makes landfall over their province.
So nandun yung fear talaga. Kasi ang kinakatakutan po sa atin ngayon, yung tubig, yung ibang-iba na po yung dating ng tubig. medyo tagsaan po yung, well, continuous raining po natin. Expected po natin na talagang lumalagi po yung ilog galing po sa bundok. At the same time, sumasalubong po kasi yung pagka high tide, yun na po yung magkakaroon po ng flash flood.
Meanwhile, Trami, that is the international name of the typhoon that we called Christine, has started going back east after making landfall in Vietnam. However, it's forecast to weaken and eventually dissipate over the West Philippine Sea.
Well, in related news, the total number of deaths due to severe tropical storm Christine has now reached 125. In its situational report, the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, said that the death count it received increased to 125, but 111 of them are still subject to verification. This means that only 14 deaths have been validated so far. Christine has affected nearly 1.8 million families, or over 7 million individuals nationwide. More than 935,000 people have been displaced by the storm, while the number of damaged houses is now over 78,000. Nearly 5,500 homes have been totally destroyed. Christine left the Philippine Area of Responsibility on October 25 after lashing parts of Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Damage to agriculture is estimated at 2.8 billion pesos and 1.5 billion pesos in infrastructure. Meanwhile, the United States has extended a helping hand to its ally, the Philippines. Aid from the U.S. has reached 84 million pesos for use in relief operations across areas affected by the powerful storm. The U.S. Agency for International Development also distributed over 1,000 relief kits and emergency supplies in the Bicol region. This is part of their mission to help Filipinos recover from the devastation caused by Christine.
That's about it. The last thing we want to hear heading into Undas, All Saints and All Souls Day, which is that two storms, right? One just left and could make a U-turn as well. And then also a super typhoon potentially developing west of the Philippines.
Also affecting pretty much the same areas
East
that Christine did. Yeah. That Christine did. So they're all kind of moving in the same path.
Yeah.
This one's headed up, right? But Pagasa just said it might make landfall.
Even if it doesn't make landfall, as we've seen in previous
the
tropical
outer rain
depressions,
bands,
the cloud bands, the rain bands,
and the trough, they can
they're
all contribute.
rough. Yeah, they dump incredible amounts of rain, and then it causes a lot of flooding once more. So hopefully it doesn't actually impact us in any way.
But it's good the Fujiwara effect that they were initially anticipating won't be happening anymore. So Christine and this Leon will no
not
longer
be interacting. So that's the
have to
spot of good news.
They have to get close enough. A certain distance before. So thank God that didn't happen, but we will still continue to monitor the situation, especially up north. It's good too that the government seems to be extra prepared this time around. On that note, that's it for the big story tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.